Hey guys, it's Geography Lover here. Welcome back to another brand new video. And today we're talking about German nationalism. Now, this is kind of a sensitive topic, and we're going to be just talking about the history about German nationalism, not specifically about like my opinion about it. Again, I don't promote this. I'm just presenting the history, so this is just used for a historical lens. So we're going to be looking at the rise of Prussia, the German Empire, and the German Confederation, and how that led to World War I and the impacts of that. So let's kind of define nationalism. So what is it? Well, nationalism is a belief in following a certain way that best aligns with the interest of a nation. Nationalism can be considered to be extreme devotion to a country or a nation state. So we have three chapters. So chapter 1 is the rise of Prussia from 1525 to 1815. So from 1525 to 1560, the Duchy of Prussia, which was a Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth duchy. But by this time, the power that the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth had on Prussia was weakening. And so the Duke ended up getting power and creating the city of Königsberg, which is in modern-day Kaliningrad Oblast of Russia. And he ended up getting a territory in mainland Germany called Brandenburg, which was part of present-day Poland and Germany now. In this territory, he was able to be an elector for the Holy Roman Emperor. So there was an impact of the 30 Years' War that was really negative on Prussia, since it was mostly a German-speaking nation state. 30 Years' War was also known as a German tragedy. Since Prussia was a Protestant kingdom, it supported all the beliefs of Martin Luther, and 30 Years' War was mostly against the Protestants versus Catholics, but it was mostly against the Habsburgs versus the non-Habsburgs. Frederick William, Duke of Prussia, wanted to have a strong army, and after the war, by 1655, the army had about 25,000 men. And then there was the new establishment of the kingdom, and by 1670, the army had 40,000 men after they fought against the French in the 9 Years' War. And they ended up joining the Polish to gain more autonomy if they fought against the Swedish, which they did. And this Frederick, Duke of Prussia, ended up becoming King Frederick I of Prussia in 1701, which created the kingdom. Then 30 years later, in 1740, Frederick II, King of Prussia, wanted to gain new territories, and so he declared war on Austria. This was known as the War of the Austrian Succession, and he declared war on Austria to take the territory of Silesia, which was part of the Kingdom of Bohemia, which was part of the Holy Roman Empire, which was owned by the Habsburgs. Currently, at this point, Holy Roman Emperor Charles VI had died, and his daughter Maria Theresa became empress. However, people didn't recognize her since she was a woman. So Frederick II took the opportunity to send troops to Silesia and occupy it, and he was successful in defeating Austria and making Silesia part of the kingdom. Then after this, the 7 Years' War made Austria pretty mad, so they ended up deciding to ally with the French, while the Prussians allied with the British and the Portuguese. And the war broke out in 1756. Thanks to the great work of King Frederick II and the British. They won against the great powers of Europe, and it led to Prussia's rise as one of the European great powers, and also the decline of Austria. And then by 1772, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, which they had been subservient to, they ended up allying with the Russians and the Austrians to occupy and take territories to connect Prussia once and for all, instead of it being in two places. And by 1780, the Prussian army, thanks to the industrialization of Frederick II and the new territories from Poland, had 80,000 men. And then the Napoleonic Wars from 1799 to 1815 left Prussia in a constant state of fighting against the French and Napoleon. The Holy Roman Empire was dissolved in 1806, and this led to the Confederation of the Rhine, which was a French puppet state. And this was run by Napoleon, and it pretty much was like the Holy Roman Empire, except with France in charge instead of the Austrians. Napoleon was defeated at the Battle of Waterloo, and in 1815, the Congress of Vienna kind of decided Napoleon's fate, and also gave Prussia so many territories, especially in the heart of Germany, and so it connected its territories more interconnected, and it gave it also some land in Switzerland as well. So that was pretty good for Prussia. And then Chapter 2, the German Confederation and the German Empire. 1815 to 1900. So the Congress of Vienna, again in 1815, it also created the German Confederation, and this was to help unite German-speaking territories under one kind of government, but it wasn't really a government, so it was like the Holy Roman Empire, very, spread out and not really centralized. But the leader / president of the Confederation was the Emperor of Austria, who was a Habsburg, and it happened to be Francis I in 1815. And then the revolutions of 1848, 30 years later, led to these growing ideas of nationalism. We're beginning to have an uprising of liberal ideas of kind of a one government, and the German Confederation kind of was an example of that. But since Austria was kind of in the control of the German Confederation, Prussia kind of seized the opportunity to kind of take more control of it, and they wanted and then the people who rose up against these rebellions wanted a united Germany, with Prussia being the leader instead of Austria. So this kind of led to a rivalry between Prussia and Austria, which is on the next right here, Prussia versus Austria. Prussia had built railroad connections with the rest of the German small states, and by the 1850s was pretty much the leader of the German Confederation, while Austria was at the outs. Prussia contained most of the industrialized countries in the German Confederation, with being at home to many industrial cities, and the railroad companies connecting Berlin to many other German states, while Austria was very geographically distant, multiculturally distant, with having 14 different languages, nationalities, and also being very autocratic, versus Prussia getting a little bit more freedom to the other states. And then there were some new wars against Denmark and, of course, Austria. By 1864, Prussian Prime Minister Otto von Bismarck wanted to unite Germany once and for all by using liberal ideas for his own bidding, which led to the Danish-Prussian War, of which the new territories of Schleswig and Holstein joined Prussia. Then in 1866, Prussia waged a short war against Austria to take more territories and asserts control over northern Germany, and creating the North German Confederation in 1867 to the detriment of Austria. And because of this, southern German states were kind of afraid Prussia was going to take them over, but the Prussians again fought against France in the Franco-Prussian War in 1871, which they were successful and united the southern territories into joining them, and also taking Alsace-Lorraine from the French, creating the German Empire in the Palace of Versailles. Otto von Bismarck led this effort, and he led to a rise of production and weapons, and this was the beginning of the German Empire. Then in 1884, Otto von Bismarck hosted the Berlin Conference, which allowed the partition of Africa and the rise of new colonies in the Pacific, Atlantic, and Indian Ocean. Germany got colonies of Togoland, Namibia, German Southwest Africa, German East Africa, which is now Tanzania, and Cameroon. Germany's navy was on the rise and created a rivalry with the British Navy, which made the British kind of angry and led them to distrust the Germans, since the Germans just unified a few years prior. And this led to the Triple Alliance, since the British were kind of threatened by the Germans. Germany decided to make an alliance with Austria-Hungary and the newly unified Italy in 1861, which had just unified. In 1882, the alliance was fully enacted so that no one would be attacked. This alliance was the counter to the Entente Alliance, which became in 1907 between the UK, Russia, and France. And this was one of the major escalation points of World War I. Speaking of which, that's Chapter 3, World War I. So the beginning of the war, late June of 1914, the Austria-Hungary Archduke Franz Ferdinand was assassinated, beginning World War I, leading to many war declarations. Since Russia declared war on Germany, Germany declared war on France, and ended up fighting a war on two fronts. It initially was successful invading Belgium and northern France, but it led the UK to declare war on Germany, since Belgium was neutral at this time, and also led many smaller nations to declare war on Germany quickly, like Montenegro and Serbia, which was mostly fighting against Austria-Hungary, but that was later in 1914. But the Schlieffen Plan was the idea to invade northern France to get to Paris quickly, as they did in the Franco-Prussian War. This was to stall Russia from invading the eastern territory of the German Empire, and it was mostly focused on the Western Front. The German army marched into the Marne River, but they were stopped by the French and British armies, which were militarily stronger combined. The new territories, new entries, we have the Ottoman Empire, who joined late 1914, and the Bulgarians in 1915. The German Navy marched into the western territories of the Russian Empire. They also, the Navy sunk the British ship Lusitania, which had 129 Americans on board. This led to tension with the United States. However, Japan ended up declaring the war on Germany as well and took some territories in China and in Asia, while the Entente powers take all the territories in Africa. And again, some other new entries at this time, as I said, Bulgaria and Italy, who declares war on Austria-Hungary, which betrays the Triple Alliance. Germany gets upset and basically questions if that alliance was valid. Serbia is dismantled after Bulgaria and Austria-Hungary invaded. And March of 1916, Germany declared war on Portugal since their alliance they had with the British. And then the Battle of Verdun happens in 1916, and that lasted for about 10 months. So that was a really one of the most deadly battles of the war. And in May 1916, the Battle of Jutland, which was right near Denmark, which was one of the most deadly sea battles, takes place between the British and German navies. The German Navy starts sending any ship in the Atlantic Ocean. Specifically, the German U-boats were sinking them, which made the United States pretty upset since the United States was sending supplies to the British, and this made them consider being neutral. But the Americans ended up joining the war because of the Zimmermann Telegram. In 1917, the German army sent a telegram to Mexico to support an alliance against the United States, and this was intercepted by the British, which led to the United States to declare war on Germany in April 6, 1917, and this was known as the Zimmermann Telegram because he was the man who initiated this telegram. Greece ended up declaring war on the Germans as well because of the French influence over the government, since they wanted to liberate Serbia and Montenegro. And the U.S. enters in early 1918 in Europe, and they pushed Germany back to the French border, and the Germans ended up surrendering later on. But after the Ottomans, Bulgarians, and Austrians all surrendered in late October, and Austria on November 3rd. And then eventually they surrendered on November 11th, 1918, which is known as Armistice Day or Veterans Day. The Germans didn't sign the treaty until 1919, which was the Treaty of Versailles. But the German people ended up having a revolution to dethrone the Kaiser because they were so angry about the humiliating loss, which would lead to many extremist people in the Weimar Republic getting power. Thank you guys for watching this video. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.